What's up guys, this is Nishi from MST.TV here, and in today's video I want to do an in-depth discussion with you guys about the upcoming set, Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge. This set's coming out on July 12th, so in just over a week, and I want to do this discussion as sort of a follow-up to Tombox's full set analysis, but rather than going over every single card in the set and looking at some of the newer archetypes coming out, I want to focus specifically on the cards that are reprinted. Over the last 2 years, we've had 2 Battles of Legend sets come out, and both of them have been really highly anticipated, really well received, and that's largely in part due to these reprints. Reprints are super important for the game because they make expensive cards more accessible for a lot of casual players, and at the same time it rarity bumps cards, so making cards that were previously only available as commons or rares available as holos for the first time, letting players bling out their decks. So in this video, what I want to do is break down, first, like, what are some of the chase cards in the set, what are the highlights, what cards is everyone going to be looking for, and then I want to discuss my price expectations. So where are these prices going to be when the cards first come out, when the set first drops, and where do I think that the prices are going to be going, and I want to kind of explain my reasoning, my rationale behind these price predictions. And at the same time, what I want to do is go over some cards that I think are going to be super cheap when the set drops, or cheaper, cards that I think are going to be a really solid investments, cards I think you guys should pick up because they're going to appreciate in value over the next year, 2 years, 3 years as the set goes out of print. One disclaimer I do want to make though is I am going to be assuming that the cards reprinted in the set are not going to be reprinted anytime within the immediate future. So we do have 2 very important reprint sets coming out in the Gold Sarcophagus Megatins and Dual Devastator, and we also have, like, OTS packs where cards could be reprinted in. I'm going to assume that if the card was reprinted in Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge, it's not going to be reprinted in those following sets, just because that's going to significantly affect the price if it were to be reprinted a second time. So yeah, that being said, let's get started. Alright guys, so first card we're talking about, what's probably the most highly anticipated reprint from Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge. We are talking about Borel Sword Dragon. This card is absolutely devastating. You guys all know what it does. It ends games on its own. If you guys are playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like a staple in 99% of extra decks that you'll see. Borel Sword Dragon was actually pretty consistently like a $70 plus card right up until its reprint was announced, and I'm fully expecting it to be one of the most, if not the most expensive cards in the set. The card's still going to be a staple. I'm still expecting everyone to be playing this card, so I am expecting its price to fall within that $30 to $40 range, which is like the higher end price for a Battles of Legend card. Assuming that the card continues to see play, I think it's going to stay within that range. If the card sort of falls off, so if we start seeing more like Borel Dragon or other Link 4 monsters, I could see the price dropping to maybe like $25 to $30, but realistically I think the card is still going to see just as much play as it did before, and I actually think that assuming it doesn't get reprinted, it's going to creep up from there. So it's going to start off between $30 to $40, and I'd expect it to creep up to around $45, maybe $50. So if you guys don't already have your copy, I definitely think that this is a card that you should pick up your 1 copy of. Just invest in it because it's such a powerful card and it's such a staple. I would go out and get your copy right when the set drops. So next up, we're going to be looking at Sky Striker reprints. So in the set we have 4 Sky Striker cards that are being reprinted. We have Engage, Widow Anchor, Afterburners, and Ray. Ray was only a super when it originally came out, so we're not going to focus on it here, but Engage, Widow Anchor, and Afterburners are the 3 more expensive cards from Sky Strikers because they were short printed in Dark Saviors. So this deck, it's been seeing a lot of competitive success over the last year, and I think that the cards finally being reprinted is a pretty strong indication that the deck is going to be hit in the near future. So for now, I think that Engage, when it comes out, it's going to be, like a $15 to $20 card because it's finally being reprinted, but a lot of players are going to expect the deck to get hit, so it's not going to have that full $40, $50 value that we're seeing now. Widow Anchor, I'm expecting it to come out and be, $8 to $10. and Afterburners as a card that's only played at 1. If that, I'm expecting it to be around $2 to $3. Now, the viability of the engine beyond the next ban list is going to be a huge factor in the price of these cards. So right now we're seeing the Sky Striker engine played as sort of like a small engine in Orcus, so I see them playing triple engage and the 1 Hornet drone so that they can make Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus so that they can go into Mermaid, and it's a 1 card Nightmare Mermaid that lets you start off your combo. And depending on how the Sky Striker deck gets hit, that will affect the prices of the cards. So if we see on the next ban list that engage is limited, I think that the entire deck is essentially dead, and I think that as an engine the deck is also dead. So I would expect all of these prices to tank. I don't see engage being more than like $3 to $4 to be honest, just because all of the cards are kind of dead if engage is put to 1. But if they take the route that I think they're going to take and limit multi-roll, or ban multi-roll actually, and leave engage at 3, then I think that the deck still is a fairly viable engine. You can still splash engage with the Hornet drones into Orcus, or I don't know what other decks are going to come out that are going to be able to make use of this engine. But I would expect engage at that point. It's still going to get hit because, right, like Sky Striker is no longer the force that it's going to be without multi-roll. But if the engine is still strong, I can see engage still retaining around $10 to $15. Widow Anchor probably not seeing as much play, probably floating around that $5 range, and then Afterburners being $1 or $2. So yeah, it really depends on ultimately how Sky Strikers are going to get hit on the upcoming ban list. That being said, when Battles of Legend comes out, I think these cards are still going to be a little bit overpriced. I think that the value, regardless of how the deck gets hit, is going to come down over time. So if you do pull these cards, I mean, if you want to play the deck for the next month or 2 before the ban list, then by all means go ahead, like while you can still play somewhat strong Sky Striker before the next ban list. But if you have no intentions of playing the deck, I would sell it if you were to pull the cards. I wouldn't pick them up quite yet. Wait until the deck gets hit on the ban list, and that's your time to pick up these cards. Alright guys, so next things we're going to talk about, I've grouped these cards here together because they're reprinted just for the increase in accessibility. Right, like these cards, they're not super meta cards, but they're cards that are played in sort of off meta decks, and because of that, players have been like looking for these cards, and it's kind of driven the price up gradually over time. So first up we have Drago Necro Nether Soul Dragon. This is the card that ever since Super Poly came off the ban list, zombie players, you play Zombie World, you play Super Poly, you fuse 2 of your opponent's monsters, and you basically like make this for free. Get rid of 2 of your opponent's problem cards just by discarding the card, and your opponent like can't respond to it. Super powerful, and Drago Necro Dragon had been going up, you know, like past that $10, $12, $15 range for some time. And the reprint just gives it a little bit more accessibility. Zombies are like a favorite deck of a lot of casual players because of how cheap they are. And Drago Necro was kind of that one like super expensive piece. That being said, I think there's still going to be some demand for this card. So I do think the price is going to be around like $2 to $3. It's not going to be like bulk necessarily, but it is going to be a lot cheaper than before. Next up we have Herald of the Arclight. Ever since Necros of Brianet came back to 3, Herald of the Arclight has kind of like jumped in price up to like $10 to $12 because we've only seen 2 printings, right? It had the original print and it was reprinted in the Megatins. Herald of Arclight still being important in the deck because you can activate Necros Kaleidoscope, send this to the graveyard to summon out Necros of Unicorn, and then search for your deck for a ritual monster. And that's like a super powerful combo because of how strong Unicorn is, and you get like anything in the deck basically, right? You can search Brianak, which searches the rest of the archetype. You can search Clissalis for like any of the spells, or you can search Trish and like have like some really big power play like right after. So Herald was like a super important piece, and even with this reprint, Necros, because the Brio, Trish, and Valk were just reprinted in dual power, I actually think that Herald of the Arclight is going to be one of the more popular sought after ultra rares in the set. Not that it's going to be super expensive, but I am expecting it to have around like a $3 to $5 price tag, just because there are a lot of players more like on the casual side that want to play Necros. like in this format, but also making like old format decks. Like I know that making old format Necros is actually pretty popular. People enjoy playing that mirror match. I know that when I played the deck way back then, I really enjoyed the mirror match. So yeah, me and some friends are definitely looking to build that. So Herald is actually a card that I would pick up, you know, if you can get it for like that $1 or $2. Next up is Guardian of Order. This one's kind of a weird one. Guardian of Order only has one print in Light of Destruction, and it has a super version, but it was actually the sneak peek card from the same set. And I think that since then, it hasn't received any reprints. It was still like a $10 to $12 card because you can special summon it for free. But the only time that I've seen it really see any competitive play, I think it topped. It was in a Noble Knight deck list that topped once like a year or a year and a half ago though. I mean, it is a free extender and you can like make a sold with it, but really I haven't seen too much competitive success from the card. I think that it's Konami just looking at it and saying, you know, this is a card that we want to reprint and they're giving us access to it. Maybe now that people know about it, like it's gonna see something. But ultimately I see this card maybe being $1, like if that. I think that ultimately it's going to be one of the bulkier cards in the set. And finally we have Cyberstein. Cyberstein is kind of like well, we have that Shonen Jump ultra rare card. Like people wanted this card off the ban list for so long, and then it finally got off the ban list and we didn't really see anything from it. We have the Shonen Jump ultra rare printing, which is like $5,000-$7,000, but that's more of like because of how collectible the card is. The only print that's really widely available for casual players is the Dark Beginnings 2 rare version, and I think that's cards, it was still commanding like a $15-$20 price point right after Cyberstein got unbanned. I don't know where it is now, probably around the same range, but ultimately like Cyberstein hasn't really seen any competitive play. Like I haven't seen anything from it too recently, but the fact that they're reprinting it, they're just acknowledging that it's off the ban list and it hasn't really had many printings, so maybe giving players like casual players the opportunity to use this card, because it is kind of fun. Like you can drop anything from your extra deck and kind of be like forcing your opponent to deal with it. So I think it is going to be like a pretty popular card for people to pull. I think it's like a solid like anywhere from $2 to $4, nothing like super expensive, nothing super valuable, but like a decent card for you to pull. Yeah, so all 4 of these cards, I think that ultimately the prices are going to gradually fall over time as more and more of the set is opened. I think that they're all like, they're good reprints, don't get me wrong. They're cards that needed to be reprinted at some point so that players have access to them, but ultimately the supply of these cards is just going to increase as more and more packs are opened, and the demand just isn't there, so they're going to gradually fall over time. If you want to pick them up for your own casual decks or for whatever you guys want to play, I'd say go ahead. The cards are going to be cheap enough. Pick up your sets, and yeah. Alright guys, so 2 other cards to talk about in terms of cards that were just reprinted because of how high their prices were. So first up we have Elemental Hero Neos Knight. This card only had the 1 printing before. In Extreme Victory it was available as both an ultra rare and an ultimate rare. There was actually a lot of opportunity with this card because I would find this card in people's bulk and I'd be able to pick it up for like $1 or $2 in trade. But this card was like super low key, like a $10 to $15 card. So yeah, it's not really like the card was super competitive or viable or it was seeing a lot of play. It's just that over time, the card like only had 1 print and it's an elemental hero card. It had to be reprinted inevitably. So yeah, this card's obviously just gonna, if it's gonna be $1, if that, right? Like it's really just like bulk, it's just filler, so that people have access to it. And then the other card to talk about here is number 93 Utopia Kaiser. So we finally have this prize card reprinted. Right before we had like Minerva, we've had Dvorak reprinted now, and now we have Utopia Kaiser. Ultimately, like Utopia Kaiser, I think it's like a little bit more viable than some of the other than some of the other prize cards. So it is kind of decent, but like it's not like a super competitive like meta card that people are going to be like going for, not even like anywhere close to the way Minerva was. So I think that because it is a reprint of what was a prize card, the card is inherently going to retain some value. It's still going to be like anywhere from $2 to $5, but it is by no means going to be one of those like super exclusive chase cards that everyone's going to want. Yeah, so I think that as soon as the set drops, I would sell the card. If you pull it, sell it for whatever like the market price is or a little bit less, because the price is only going to drop as more and more people have access to it. They realize it's not that special. Or you look at a card like Dvorak, which now has 2 printings, the premium gold reprint, and it has the Infinity Chasers reprint, right? And both of those printings, like when Dvorak was first reprinted, it was super high up. It was, well, not super high, it was like a $5 to $10 card. And then the Infinity Chasers reprint came out and it just became more widely available, and now it's like maybe $1, if that. I think Utopia Kaiser is going to kind of be similar, right? So it's going to be a little bit higher, so like $2, $3, $5 right when the set comes out, and then it's just going to gradually drop over time. So both of these cards only reprinted because of how high their prices were. If you have an opportunity to sell them, I would sell them right away when the set drops. Alright guys, so now we're going to get into the point where we're talking about cards that were previously unavailable as holos finally being printed as holos for the first time. The 3 cards that I've chosen to highlight here, Dino Wrestler Prankratops, Summon Limit, and Artifact Lancia, I think that these are 3 of the most valuable cards that you can be picking up in the set at release. Prankratops is like a super versatile side deck card. It's like a 2600 body, and you contribute it to pop a card. You don't need to burn like your normal summon on it, and it's pretty free. This card was only available as a common, so because so many players have their commons, I don't think that Prankratops is going to command like a super high price point right at the beginning. I think it's only going to be like $1, $2, maybe $3. But I think that gradually over time, assuming that Prankratops continues to be that very valuable staple side deck card, I mean the card's semi-limited in OCG, right? Like the card is just going to increase gradually in value over time as it sees more and more play. And if we hit a point where it doesn't see play, I can see it going down, but then it's going to see more play and it's going to rise back up gradually. Summon Limit is a very similar card. Summon Limit's different because it did have a higher price point before, right? It's a pretty old common. It was printed in Light of Destruction, and then it had a reprint as a Duelist League rare. So outside of those 2, it hadn't really had many printings before, so it did have that like slightly higher price point, but this is the first time that it's coming out holo. And Summon Limit's another card that's where the price is just going to fluctuate depending on the meta. Right now, I guess the card's like a pretty good card, so I am expecting to see it have like a $3 to $5 price point. And you know, as the card sort of falls out of favor, I see it dropping to like $1 to $3, and then gradually increasing again as it gets more and more relevant in the meta. So this is a card that if you can get it for like that $1 or $2, I think it's a really solid pickup. The card's a super solid side deck option, and yeah, it's only going to increase as it sees more play in the meta. And then finally we have Artifact Lancia. There are some people who are describing Artifact Lancia as like the best card in the format right now because of how it completely shuts off turns for Orcus players. And I definitely see it. Like, I've loved Artifact Lancia. I've actually been playing Artifact Lancia since back in the Duelist Alliance format, where when your opponent activates Necroz's Mirror, you activate Lancia, and they can't banish the materials from their graveyard in order to summon. So they're forced to tribute monsters on the field or from their hand and make like a super subpar play. So I love Artifact Lancia. And, you know, depending on how relevant the card is in the meta, again, the price is going to fluctuate. Artifact Lancia is different because we have like the common original print, we have the mega pack reprint, and then we also have an OTS pack common. I really thought it was going to be an OTS pack super, but it's an OTS pack common, and now we finally have this print. So it's not going to see a super high price point at the beginning, right? So many like players, everyone already has access to all of their copies of Artifact Lancia, so it's not like it's a super highly sought after or rare card right now. But I think that gradually, as more and more players want it to bling out their side decks, I think the price is gradually going to increase over time. So Lancia, I'm looking at as a card that's going to be $1 to $3, maybe $5 if you're like pushing it, but I don't really see it as a $5 card, especially not right at the beginning, right? I see it staying between that $1 to $3 range, and then gradually as the set gets out of print, more and more and more players have opened it, and everyone is like trying to hoard their copies. I see Artifact Lancia increasing gradually up towards that $5 point. So all of these cards, Pankratops, Summon Limit, and Artifact Lancia, if you can pick them up at the $1 to $2 to $3 price points, I would go ahead, pick up your sets, and then just hold on to them, because I think that these are good cards to pick up and hold. Alright guys, so next up we're going to talk about Shaddolls. Shaddolls have been like a super popular fan favorite deck for so long. I mean, even when Shaddol Construct was banned, that card was still like a $20-$25 card for the ultimate rare. And we are finally seeing Hedgehog, Falco, Squamata all being printed as holos for the first time. We did already actually have Shaddol Beast as a super rare from Astral Pack. But now we're seeing kind of the whole lineup minus Shaddol Dragon being printed as a holo. Ultimately, like, Shaddolls aren't a super popular deck in the meta right now, so I don't see these cards as being very expensive when the set first drops, right? I see them being like, you know, like those kind of cards are like $1, maybe $2, or maybe 50 cents, like depending on who the person you're buying them from is. However, they are holo prints for a very popular archetype, and if you guys are paying attention to what's happening in the OCG right now, there is a survey going on where they're asking players what archetypes they want to see new structure deck support for. And I think that at the time that I'm filming this right now, Sacred Beast is actually the deck that's winning, so Haman, Uria, and Raviel. But for most of the poll, and what's in second place right now, is Shaddolls. And I think that if we do see a Shaddol structure deck come out, then all of these cards are definitely gonna see like pretty big price increases. It's like if you were playing all 4 of these monsters, I can see them all pretty easily like rounding out to like $3 to $5 cards. So, you know, I wouldn't say put like a bunch of money into these cards because we don't know what the new support's going to be. We don't know which of these older cards are still going to be relevant. But as in terms of like cheap investments go, if you can pick them up for like 50 cents to $1 maybe at most, I would definitely pick up like a set of each and just hold on to them, because you're not really like risking very much. You're putting in like a maximum investment of like $5 or $10, but the potential for that return is very, very big if we do eventually get that Shaddol structure deck. Alright guys, so up next we're going to talk about a few of the more like random reprints. I feel like any of these cards would have been better off being just like OTS pack reprints as holos, but instead they're giving it to us here as kind of like a filler for this set. So Subterra Guru, obviously only played in Subterra. The deck's like a pretty popular anti-meta deck, and like Fiendus and Hidden City are already both available as holos. It's just the Guru that needs the holo printing, so that's kind of cool. We have Crimson Fox and Kaleido Chick, both from Luna Lights. That deck kind of like topped out of nowhere. I think that deck's like an OTK deck, and yeah, it's just 2 cards that were only common, like they're both played in the deck, I guess. I think the other one that's played is Tiger, like that Pendulum Scale card, but that card isn't in here. Maybe it's going to be an OTS pack super, who knows. Then we have Necros Cycle. Necros Cycle wasn't reprinted in dual power with the rest of the Necros stuff, which was kind of weird. But I believe it is a secret rare in this set, which is great because it's finally going to be able to match Kaleidoscope and Necros Mirror, so that's kind of cool. And then we have Salamangrate Sanctuary and Will of the Salamangrate. Both of these cards are one-ofs in Salamangrate, so I mean, like, I guess they're somewhat meta relevant reprints, but not cards that are going to be like super high in demand by any stretch of the imagination. So all of these cards, realistically, we're looking at them as being pretty bulky. They're going to be like maybe $1, if that. If you pull them and you have the opportunity to sell them for $1, go ahead and just move them. Or if you want to like bling out your decks, they're gonna be cheap enough. Alright guys, so next we're going to talk about a few of the other like miscellaneous reprints in the set. So first off, we have Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial had a lot of other different printings, right? So it has like a bunch of common printings. We have the Dual Terminal, we have the Champion Pack Super, and we have the Secret Rare from Legendary Collection, Joey's World. But this is just like another really solid holo reprint of a stable card, which I'm really fond of. Like, we didn't really have a super easily accessible holo reprint of Foolish Burial. Like, the closest thing was probably the Legendary Collection reprint, but even that was creeping up towards like that $8 to $10 mark. So I really like this reprint. I think Foolish Burial is like, it's a card that's always going to see some play in some sort of deck, so it's nice to have that holo reprint readily available. Next up, we have Elemental Hero Stratos. Stratos has like a whole bunch of different prints, right? It has like a bunch of commons, champion pack, rare, original ultra print from the Shonen Jump magazine. We have the Collector's Tin Super, we have the DT, and then most recently, we have the OTS pack ultimate rare. But the big thing about Stratos here is that Stratos has been on the ban list for such a long time that so many of those prints are actually really difficult to find. So we did have the only printing after Stratos has come off the ban list is the OTS pack ultimate rare, but obviously that's like a print that's a little bit more difficult to find. So the fact that we are getting Stratos printed at mass in a holo variant is actually really great. The other thing to consider is that with Elemental Hero Stratos, Stratos is currently only at 1 in the TCG, but it's at 3 in the OCG. So depending on like whether or not Konami decides to copy the OCG, we could see Stratos go to 2 or 3. So I'm actually thinking that right now Elemental Hero Stratos is only going to be like a $1 to $3 card at the moment, because like heroes aren't like a super dominant force in the meta right now. But if we see heroes to become like a bigger part of the meta, or if we see Stratos go to 2 or to 3 and copy that OCG ban list, I can definitely see Stratos hitting that $5, maybe even $10 price point, even though it's just a reprint here. So Stratos is definitely a card that I'd be picking up for like that $1 to $2, maybe $3 trade range. Next up, we have White Dragon, Wyver Buster, and Black Dragon Collapse Serpent. So before, these cards were only available as commons, the original Shadow Spectre print, the Megatin, and as a structure deck common, and then they got reprinted in Astral Pack 5, I believe, as a holo. And because of the play that they're seeing in the Danger Chaos Thunder Dragon deck, the super printings being the only available holo, these cards actually jumped up to being anywhere from like that $10 to $12 price range for the holo. So it's nice to see these cards being reprinted again as holos, so that more casual players like have access to them. And the thing to remember about these cards is they're actually like ridiculously good in link formats, because they're so easy to summon. They don't cost your normal summon at all, and they each replace themselves. So even though like, I mean, I guess you could brick with them if you open, like if you draw multiples of them, but for the most part they're a really good engine. And the other thing is that it grants you access to the Guard Dragon package, so as long as the Guard Dragons exist, that's still a really strong engine that can put like really big monsters on board and summon monsters out of the deck. So definitely when the set drops, I don't see these cards being like super expensive, right? Like they're only seeing play in that Danger Chaos Thunder Dragon deck, so they're gonna be like maybe $1 to $2 to $3 at most for like an individual copy. Realistically, like set for $5, and then we're seeing like all 6 of them for about $10. But definitely, if you don't have like your set of the supers already and you want the holo prints, I would go ahead and pick these up right when the set drops, because if we see these cards see more and more play, like with the Guard Dragon engine being splashed into different decks, or like a bunch of different chaos monsters being played, then these cards, they're only going to go up in the future. Alright guys, so the last card we're going to talk about here is Artifact Scythe. Scythe is kind of like the last piece of that artifact engine that hadn't really been reprinted before. So we had like Sanctum reprinted as a secret rare in Battles of Legend, and we had Moral Talk reprinted as a common. But the Scythe, really, it only had like the original print, it had the ultra rare sneak peek print, and then it had the Megatin reprint. So we've actually seen Scythe jump up in popularity as the artifact engine was like sided into different decks with just the 3 Sanctum and the 1 Scythe. So we've gradually seen Scythe climb from being like a $5 card to being anywhere from like $10 to $12. So this reprint is actually really welcome, and I think it's it just means that the artifact engine is gonna see a lot more play. People are gonna be citing this engine a lot more for decks that are trying to go first. So on set release, I actually think that Scythe is gonna be like a reasonably priced card, right? It's gonna be anywhere from like that $2, $3, $4 price range, and then its price is kind of gonna fluctuate depending on how much play we see from the artifact engine. So we're gonna remember that artifact Scythe, when we're seeing it sided, we're only seeing 1, maybe 2 copies sided, right? So it's not like Sanctum where we need to be playing 3 copies. So it shouldn't, the price shouldn't go too high. But if we're seeing a lot of different people play the artifact engine, then maybe people are gonna want to pick up multiple copies of Scythe, which is gonna drive that price up little by little. If you have like your Sanctums and your Moral Talk and everything else, then I'd say go ahead and pick up like your play set of artifact Scythe right at set release, because I think that it is a good engine to just hold on to. I know I've like had my engine ever since like way back in like the Duelist Alliance format, and it's something that I've like used in a lot of different decks. And yeah, so if you have like the rest of the engine, maybe you sold the Scythes just because they were high, now is like the great time to pick them up. And if you don't have any parts of the artifact engine, I get Scythes while the entire engine is so cheap, just to have that option to be able to play with. Alright guys, so that's it from me for this video. Overall, this set probably isn't going to be as good as the original Battles of Legend set. You know, reprint sets tend to be better when there's a lot more like expensive cards that are in demand being reprinted, which really isn't the case here. Like there's a few, but in this case there's definitely more cards that are being rarity bumped. That being said, I do think that there is definitely like plenty of opportunity for people to invest in this set. I'm not going to recommend that you go out and buy boxes or cases of the set, but there are a lot of really good single cards in this set for you to pick up. Just because the cards are cheap at set release right now doesn't mean that they're going to stay that way, because you know, like as the demand for a certain card goes up, we almost always see the price go up in a similar way. So yeah, that's all from me. I'm looking forward to working on some more videos in the near future. I have one more video coming up regarding the same Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge set that I'd like to do, where I'm going to go over some of the cards that aren't in the set but are going to see their prices affected by the reprints and some of the premier cards that we see here. So there are going to be some cards that I definitely think you should be looking at to pick up. You're definitely not going to want to miss that one. Yeah, so if you like this video and you want to see more from me, Nishi, be sure to give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comment section below what reprints you guys are most looking forward to in Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge. And just remember to subscribe if you haven't already. So yeah, until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV. I still do this, Tombox.